The amber glow of Chiron 5's toxic atmosphere filtered through the reinforced windows of mining outpost Delta 7, casting long shadows across the worn metal floors. Outside, the corrosive winds howled against the structure's protective shields, a constant reminder of the hostile environment that surrounded the small human settlement. Mara Langston wiped sweat from her brow as she carefully catalogued mineral samples, her methodical approach to science evident even in this remote corner of the galaxy. Extraction Team Bravo reports another rich vein of neodymium in Sector 9, announced Coordinator Jensen over the facility's comm system. Dr. Langston, they've found some unusual crystalline formations you might want to examine. Mara nodded to herself, securing her samples before preparing to join the extraction team. As a xenopsychologist who had pivoted to astrobiology, she found Chiron 5 fascinating despite its dangers. The planet existed at the very edge of human expansion, a frontier outpost that barely registered on interstellar maps. That obscurity had been their protection, until today. The first indication of trouble came as a subsonic vibration that made the mining equipment rattle against the walls. Mara felt it in her chest before she heard it, a deep, resonant hum that didn't belong to any mining machinery she recognized. "Unidentified vessel approaching." Jensen's voice cracked with alarm. "It's not responding to hails and—" The communication cut off abruptly as the facility's lights flickered and died. Emergency systems engaged, bathing everything in a dull red glow. Mara froze, her mind racing through possibilities. Pirates, corporate raiders, asteroid impact. None seemed likely this far from established routes. The answer came with terrifying swiftness. The outpost's reinforced doors glowed white-hot before melting inward, and through the smoking aperture strode figures unlike any Mara had seen before. Tall, lithe forms encased in silvery exoskeletons moved with predatory grace. Their elongated heads featured no visible eyes, only a network of fine, glowing filaments that pulsed with inner light. Each carried what appeared to be ceremonial staffs that emitted faint blue halos. Zevrans. Mara had heard rumors of this species, telepathic conquerors from beyond the Orion Arm. Until now, they had been considered more myth than reality in human space. "Primitive life forms," came a voice inside her head, rich with contempt. "Secure them for processing." The miners around Mara collapsed to their knees as invisible force washed over them. She watched in horror as energy shackles materialized around their wrists and ankles, pulsing with the same blue light as the staffs. The humans' faces went slack. Their eyes glazed over as some form of neural suppression took hold. One of the Zevran approached Mara, its head tilting in what might have been curiosity. This one observes, rather than cowers. It communicated to its companions. "No matter, all mammals yield to the shackle." The alien raised its staff, and blue energy coalesced around Mara's limbs. She felt a momentary pressure, a suggestion of restraint, then a curious sensation like water slipping off oil. The energy shackles formed, but instantly shattered, dissolving into sparks that scattered across the floor. The Zevran stepped back. "Impossible," it projected, the mental voice now tinged with alarm. Mara felt something awakening within her mind, a barrier, a shield she never knew existed. Her consciousness expanded in ways she couldn't articulate, as though neural pathways long dormant had suddenly activated. "Try again," commanded a larger Zevran adorned with more elaborate armor. "Full subjugation protocol." Multiple staffs pointed at Mara, their combined energy creating a web of blue light that enveloped her completely. For a moment, pressure built against her mind, then rebounded with catastrophic force. The energy web reversed direction, surging back through the staffs and into the Zevran themselves. Their mental voices screamed in unison as the backflow overwhelmed their neural networks. One by one, they collapsed, energy shackles materializing around their own limbs. Throughout the outpost, alarms blared as systems went haywire. Through the still molten doorway, Mara could see the vast silhouette of the Zevran vessel, the Mindbreaker, according to the fragmented knowledge now filtering into her consciousness from the fallen aliens. Without fully understanding how, Mara knew what had happened. The Zevran's psionic attack had triggered something within her, an adaptive neural defense mechanism that had not only protected her, but redirected their own technology against them. The implications were staggering, but there was no time to analyze them now. Outside, more Zevrans would be waiting. The mining outpost and everyone in it remained in grave danger. As the fallen aliens began to stir, their mental voices now chaotic with fear and confusion. Mara made a decision. Knowledge of the Zevran ship's layout had transferred during the neural backflow. If she could reach the command deck, perhaps she could end this threat before more humans fell victim to these conquerors. "Stay here," she instructed the dazed miners, who were beginning to recover from the suppression field's collapse. "Barricade what's left of the entrance. I'm going to stop this at its source." Before anyone could object, Mara stepped through the ruined doorway and into the unknown, guided by borrowed knowledge and an ability she was only beginning to comprehend. The passage connecting the mining outpost to the Zevran vessel pulsed with strange energies. Mara moved cautiously, her senses heightened by the neural awakening she had experienced. Each step brought new awareness. She could feel the minds of the Zevran crew like distant stars, their thoughts a constellation of alarm and confusion. Aboard the Mindbreaker, chaos reigned. The psychic dampening field that should have rendered all non-Zevran species docile had collapsed, and the ship's systems fluctuated wildly in response to the feedback surge. Disoriented crew members stumbled through corridors, their telepathic communications fragmented and distorted. Mara accessed memories that weren't her own. Knowledge of the ship's layout transferred during the neural backflow. The command deck lay at the heart of the vessel, protected by multiple security measures designed to repel physical intruders, but against a mind that had somehow absorbed their own psionic signatures, these defenses proved useless. Security barriers recognized her as Zevran and parted. Automated weapons remained dormant as she passed. Even the elite guards stationed at critical junctions stood aside, their minds unable to distinguish her neural pattern from their commanders. As she neared the command deck, Mara began to understand fragments of the Zevran's purpose here. The miners weren't simply being taken as slaves, they were being harvested for a resource the aliens valued above all others: neural energy. The Zevran civilization was built upon the exploitation of other sentient species, their minds drained to power psionic technology beyond anything humanity had imagined. The command deck doors parted, revealing a vast chamber dominated by a crystalline structure that hung suspended from the ceiling. Within it, dozens of Zevran officers floated in a meditative state, their consciousness linked to form the ship's central command network. At Mara's entrance, they stirred, tendrils of awareness reaching out to identify the intruder. "A human?" The collective voice of the command nexus resonated with disbelief. "How have you penetrated our defenses?" Mara approached the crystal, feeling its power washing over her like waves against a cliff. "Your invasion has failed," she stated simply. "Release my people and withdraw from this system." Laughter, cold and cruel, echoed through her mind. "You speak as though you have authority here, mammal. One anomalous specimen does not change the natural order. Your kind exists to serve the Zevran Alliance, as do all non-psionic species." The crystal pulsed, and Mara felt immense pressure building against her mental shield. This was no mere subjugation attempt, but the combined might of the command nexus attempting to crush her resistance. Instead of fighting against it, Mara did something that defied Zevran understanding. She yielded, allowing the pressure to enter her consciousness but not to control it, like water accepting a stone only to flow around it. Her mind accommodated the invasion while maintaining its integrity. The result was catastrophic for the Zevran commanders. Instead of finding submission, they encountered a mirror that reflected their own control mechanisms back at them. One by one, they found themselves trapped within their own mental constructs, unable to disconnect from the Nexus yet incapable of maintaining command functions. Alarms blared throughout the Mindbreaker as critical systems began to fail. Artificial gravity fluctuated. Environmental controls went offline in multiple sections. And most devastating of all, the psionic amplifiers that maintained the Zevran's telepathic network began to overload, threatening a cascade failure that would destroy the entire vessel. "What have you done?" The collective voice now trembled with fear. "This is impossible." Mara approached the crystal, placing her palm against its cool surface. "I have done nothing but reflect your own power back at you. Now, I'll ask once more. Release my people and withdraw." "We cannot." The desperation was palpable now. "The systems won't respond. The feedback loop is beyond our control. The ship will tear itself apart." Through her connection to the Nexus, Mara could verify the truth of this claim. The Mindbreaker's systems were indeed approaching critical failure. If the ship exploded while docked with the mining outpost, everyone, human and Zeveran alike, would perish. Drawing on both her scientific training and her newly awakened abilities, Mara delved deeper into the ship's operations. The Zeveran technology was based on principles that merged the biological with the mechanical, the psionic with the physical. To save the outpost, she would need to disengage the docking clamps and move the Mindbreaker to a safe distance before the cascade failure reached its conclusion. But there was another option, one that might save both the humans and the Zevrans aboard. If she could stabilize the psionic amplifiers long enough to restore basic control functions, the ship could be saved. "I can help you," she offered, "but there must be terms." The collective consciousness recoiled. "You would negotiate while we face annihilation?" "I would prevent annihilation," Mara corrected. "For all of us. But yes, there will be conditions." Desperation won out over pride. "Speak your terms, human." "First, immediate release of all captives, not just humans, but every sentient being held in bondage across Zevran space. Second, dismantling of your subjugation technology. Third, reparations to all species you've exploited. And finally, recognition of human space as permanently off-limits to Zevran incursion." Silence greeted her demands, broken only by the escalating wail of the ship's alarms. Then, "You ask the impossible. Our entire civilization is built upon the energy harvested from subject species. Without it, we would collapse into ruin." "Then find another way to power your empire," Mara replied firmly. "Adaptation is the essence of survival. We humans know this better than most." Another silence. Longer this time. Through her connection to the Nexus, Mara could sense the furious debate raging among the Zevran commanders. Some advocated accepting her terms, others preferred death to capitulation. The ship trembled as more systems failed, forcing their decision. "We accept your basic terms." The collective finally responded. "We will release all captives and withdraw from human space. The rest must be negotiated with the High Council." "Agreed," Mara said, knowing that even this partial victory represented a seismic shift in interstellar power dynamics. "Now, let me show you how to stabilize your systems." Working together, human intuition guiding Zevran technical knowledge, they managed to halt the cascade failure. The psionic amplifiers cooled, emergency systems engaged, and the immediate crisis passed. As control returned to the command nexus, Mara felt the Zevran presence withdrawing from her mind, leaving behind an eerie silence. The crystal structure dimmed as the Zevran commanders physically disconnected from it. One by one, they emerged from suspension fields, their actual bodies far more fragile-looking than their armored subordinates. The leader, distinguished by elaborate neural filaments that glowed with internal light, approached Mara with a combination of fear and fascination. In 10,000 cycles, no species has ever reversed our subjugation technology. It communicated, its mental voice now controlled and directed rather than invasive. How is this possible? Mara considered the question. The truth was, she didn't fully understand what had happened herself. Human minds are adaptable in ways you've never encountered, she offered. Perhaps your mistake was in assuming all non-telepathic species are the same. The Zevran commander studied her with its sensory filaments. This adaptation, is it common among your kind? I don't know, Mara admitted. But I suspect we're not as unique as you might think. The galaxy is full of species that have evolved different forms of resilience. This gave the commander pause. If other species possessed similar defensive capabilities, the Zevran's entire strategy of conquest might be fundamentally flawed. We will honor our agreement, it finally stated. All human captives will be released immediately. We will withdraw from this system once repairs are complete. And the other species? Mara pressed. Those held across Zevran space? The commander's filaments dimmed slightly. A gesture Mara somehow understood indicated reluctance. That will require time and considerable adjustment to our society. But it will be done, if only to prevent encounters with more anomalies like yourself. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Mara nodded, then turned to leave the command deck. As she reached the exit, the commander's voice touched her mind once more. Dr. Langston, it said, using her name and title for the first time. You could have destroyed us all. Why didn't you? Mara paused. Because true strength isn't about domination, she replied. It's about finding better solutions than the ones we inherit. Perhaps that's a lesson both our species needed to learn. With that, she left the command deck, making her way back to the mining outpost where her fellow humans waited. No longer potential slaves, but representatives of a species that had just fundamentally altered its place in the galactic order. The days following the confrontation aboard the Mindbreaker brought rapid changes to Chiron 5. The Zevran vessel remained in orbit, damaged but functional, while its crew conducted repairs under the watchful eyes of newly installed defense systems provided as part of their capitulation. True to their word, the aliens released all human captives, not just the miners from the outpost, but others collected from various frontier settlements. Each carried stories of the Zevran's cruel efficiency, their absolute certainty that humans were nothing more than resources to be harvested. In the outpost's makeshift medical bay, Mara examined these former captives, documenting the effects of psionic subjugation on the human nervous system. Most showed signs of trauma, but were recovering quickly, another testament to human adaptability. What troubled her more were the lingering connections she sensed between them and their captors, neural pathways altered by exposure to Zevran technology. They changed something in us, explained Thomas Rivera, a terraforming engineer who had been among the first captured. I can still feel them sometimes, at the edges of my thoughts, like they left doors open in our minds. Similar reports came from other survivors, raising alarming possibilities. If the Zevran could maintain connections to their former captives, what might they learn about humanity? What vulnerabilities might they exploit in future confrontations? Mara brought these concerns to the Zevran commander during their daily communication sessions. The alien's response was troubling in its ambiguity. Neural pathways, once established, cannot be completely severed, it explained. This is not intentional monitoring, but rather an echo of the connection. It will fade with time. Whether this was truth or deception, Mara couldn't determine. The Zevran mind remained largely illegible to her despite their forced intimacy during the crisis. What she did know was that humanity's position had fundamentally changed. No longer could Earth and its colonies operate under the assumption of obscurity. The wider galactic community, with all its dangers and wonders, now knew of their existence. As the Zevran vessel prepared for departure, a communication arrived from their home world. The High Council had reviewed the incident at Chiron 5 and reached a decision that sent shockwaves through their empire. Full compliance with Mara's terms, including the phased liberation of all captive species. "This is unprecedented," the commander told her, its mental voice tinged with what might have been awe or despair. Mara couldn't distinguish which. 10,000 years of Zevran ascendancy ended by a single encounter with your kind. Not ended, Mara corrected. Transformed. Your civilization can survive without exploitation. You might even thrive once you discover the benefits of cooperation. The commander's neural filaments pulsed skeptically. You speak of ideals that have no place in the void between stars. The galaxy does not reward compassion. Perhaps that's because too few species have tried it, Mara suggested. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from the outpost's long-range scanners. Multiple vessels had entered the system, not Zevran, but human military ships responding to automated distress signals sent during the initial attack. Tension mounted as the Earth fleet established a defensive perimeter around Chiron 5, despite Mara's assurances that a tentative peace had been established. Admiral Katsumoto of the United Earth Defense Force was unwilling to take chances with an unknown alien species that had attacked a human settlement. They invaded sovereign human territory, the Admiral stated firmly during an emergency conference. They took our people captive. By any measure, this constitutes an act of war. Mara found herself in the uncomfortable position of advocating for restraint. What happened here wasn't just an attack. It was a first contact situation that evolved into something much more complex. The Zevran have agreed to unprecedented concessions. Attacking them now would undo everything we've accomplished. And what exactly have you accomplished, Dr. Langston? Katsumoto challenged. Promises from an alien species known for conquest? How can we possibly verify their compliance? It was a fair question, and one Mara had been wrestling with herself. The solution came from an unexpected source, the Zevran commander itself. We propose an exchange. It communicated during their next meeting. I will remain among your people as surety for our compliance, while you, Dr. Langston, will travel to Zevran Prime as witness to the liberation process. The proposal was met with skepticism from human authorities, but interest from xenobiologists and diplomatic corps. The opportunity to study Zevran society firsthand was unprecedented, as was the potential for establishing formal relations with a major interstellar power. After days of negotiation, a compromise was reached. Mara would indeed travel to Zevran Prime, but aboard a human vessel with a full scientific and diplomatic contingent. The Zevran commander would not remain on Chiron 5, but would instead host a human observation team aboard the repaired Mindbreaker. Both sides would maintain constant communication, with violations of the agreement triggering immediate military response. As preparations for this historic mission accelerated, Mara found moments of quiet reflection increasingly rare. The mining outpost had transformed into a hub of frenetic activity, with military personnel, scientists, and diplomats arriving daily. Everyone wanted to meet the woman who had single-handedly changed humanity's cosmic status. During one such rare moment of solitude, Mara stood at the outpost's observation dome, watching distant stars through gaps in Chiron 5's toxic clouds. The Mindbreaker hung in low orbit, its crystalline structure catching the light of the system's primary star. You should be proud, came a voice behind her. Jensen, the outpost coordinator, had aged years in the span of days. You saved us all. Mara shook her head slightly. I revealed us all, she corrected. For better or worse, humanity can no longer hide in the cosmic shadows. The Zevran are just one species among many. Who knows what else is out there, watching and waiting? Jensen joined her at the viewport. Does that frighten you? It terrifies me, Mara admitted. But it exhilarates me too. My entire career has been devoted to understanding alien psychology. And now? She gestured toward the Mindbreaker. Now I'll be immersed in it, trying to ensure they honor an agreement they never wanted to make. If anyone can do it, you can, Jensen said with conviction. Whatever happened that day, whatever you did that turned their weapons against them, it changed everything. People are calling it the Langston effect. Mara winced at the name. I didn't do anything special. My mind just adapted. And that adaptation might be the most important evolutionary step our species has ever taken. Jensen pointed out. The research teams have been testing everyone at the outpost. A few others show similar neural patterns to yours, latent but present. This was news to Mara. Who? Mostly those who've experienced severe trauma or isolation. The working theory is that extreme stress triggers neuroplastic changes that can resist psionic intrusion. Your childhood on Ceres Station might have primed your brain for exactly the kind of defense you demonstrated. The implications were staggering. If certain human experiences could activate psionic resistance, humanity might possess a natural defense against species like the Zevran. But such an advantage would come at a terrible price. Trauma as prerequisite for survival. We need better solutions, Mara murmured, almost to herself. If we start deliberately traumatizing people to activate these abilities, we're no better than the Zevran. Jensen nodded solemnly. That's why your mission is so important. We need to understand their civilization, their technology, find ways to protect ourselves without becoming them. The conversation ended as Mara's communicator signaled an incoming transmission from the mindbreaker. Final preparations were underway for departure. Tomorrow, she would leave Chiron 5 behind and venture into the heart of an empire built on subjugation, carrying humanity's hopes for a different kind of future. That night, unable to sleep, Mara reviewed everything known about the Zevran, which amounted to precious little beyond what she had gleaned during the crisis. Their society appeared rigidly hierarchical, with psionic strength determining social status. Their technology merged the organic with the mechanical in ways that defied human engineering principles, and their history, glimpsed fragmentarily through the mental connection, suggested a species driven by fear as much as ambition, fear of cognitive decline, of psionic atrophy, of becoming what they most despised, non-telepathic. Perhaps therein lay the key to lasting peace. If the Zevran could be shown that diversity of consciousness represented strength rather than weakness, that different forms of sentience offered different gifts to the galactic community, then exploitation might give way to cooperation. It was a faint hope, but hope nonetheless. With that thought, Mara finally drifted into sleep, her dreams filled with crystalline structures and minds that touched across the void. The departure ceremony was brief but weighted with historical significance. Representatives from Earth's government transmitted messages of cautious optimism. Scientific institutes issued detailed research protocols. Military commanders provided emergency extraction plans disguised as diplomatic procedures. Standing on the mindbreaker's docking platform, Mara faced her fellow expedition members, 20 humans chosen for their expertise in fields ranging from xenobiology to military intelligence. Many looked nervous, and with good reason. They were about to enter the domain of a species that had, until very recently, viewed humans as livestock. Remember why we're here, Mara addressed the group. Not as conquerors or victims, but as witnesses to change. The Zevran have agreed to dismantle a system of exploitation that spans dozens of worlds. Our presence ensures they honor that commitment. Dr. Helena Chen, the expedition's chief medical officer, spoke up. And if they don't, if this is an elaborate trap? It was a possibility Mara had considered extensively. Then Earth will know. Our transmissions will continue until the moment of betrayal. And the response will be decisive. The military contingent nodded grimly at this. Earth's fleet remained on high alert, new defense systems being installed across human space. With final checks complete, the human delegation boarded the mindbreaker. The vessel had been modified to accommodate non-Zevran physiology, with atmospheric scrubbers and gravity adjustments in designated sections. Still, much of the ship remained alien and somewhat hostile to human biology, a constant reminder of their precarious position. The journey to Zevran Prime would take 17 days by the aliens' faster-than-light technology. During this time, Mara and her team would study Zevran culture, biology, and technology while preparing for the diplomatic challenges ahead. The Zevran commander, who had finally provided a name of sorts, Telixis, though it was more a concept than a designation, maintained a formal distance during the initial transit phase. Communications were conducted through subordinates, many of whom radiated barely concealed resentment toward their human passengers. On the fourth day, Mara requested a direct meeting with Telixis. The request was granted after considerable delay, and she found herself once again on the command deck, facing the crystalline structure that served as the ship's neural nexus. "Your people avoid us," she stated without preamble. "This contradicts the spirit of our agreement." Telixis emerged from the crystal, neural filaments pulsing with internal light. "My crew finds your presence disturbing," it admitted. "You must understand, no non-telepathic species has ever traveled aboard a Zevran vessel except as cargo. This situation violates every cultural norm we possess." "Cultural norms can change," Mara pointed out. "That's rather the point of this entire exercise." "Change," Telixis repeated, the word carrying complex emotional harmonics in its telepathic projection. "You speak of it so casually, as though civilizations can transform themselves overnight. The Zevran ascendancy has existed for millennia. Dr. Langston, our ways are not simply customs, but evolutionary adaptations." Mara considered this perspective. "Perhaps, but evolution doesn't stop, does it? New pressures create new adaptations. The pressure your society now faces is the recognition that other sentient species have rights and value beyond what you can extract from them." The commander's neural filaments rippled in what might have been the equivalent of a sigh. "You misunderstand. The relationship between Zevran and subject species is not merely exploitative, it is symbiotic. We provide order, protection, technological benefits. They provide essential neural energy." "Symbiosis implies mutual consent," Mara countered. "Did any species ever voluntarily submit to this arrangement?" Telixis did not respond immediately, its filaments dimming slightly. "There were agreements in the beginning, before the Great Hunger." "The Great Hunger?" This was new information. "A period in our history when our psionic abilities began to fade. Degenerative neural patterns spread through the population. We discovered that absorption of other species' mental energies could halt the decline. What began as emergency measures became institutionalized. This revelation shifted Mara's understanding significantly. The Zevrans' exploitation of other species wasn't just cultural or economic, it was existential, tied to their very survival as a telepathic civilization. "Have you ever sought other solutions?" she asked. "Medical interventions? Genetic modifications?" "Many," Telixis confirmed. "None prove sustainable. The energy requirement is fundamental to our biology now, after thousands of years of dependence." The implications were troubling. If the Zevran truly couldn't survive without harvesting neural energy from other species, then the liberation Mara had demanded might amount to a death sentence for an entire civilization. "There must be alternatives," she insisted. "Voluntary donors, artificial neural networks, something that doesn't require enslavement." "Perhaps," Telixis acknowledged. "But such alternatives would require time to develop, time during which our species would suffer catastrophic decline. The High Council agreed to your terms not because they believed in your moral position, but because you demonstrated a power that threatened our entire way of life. Fear, not conviction, drives this change." It wasn't the idealistic transformation Mara had hoped for, but it was honest. "Then we'll need to find solutions quickly," she said. My people won't accept continued exploitation as the price of peace, even temporarily. Talixis's neural filaments brightened slightly, a gesture Mara had come to recognize as indicating interest or engagement. You offer help rather than condemnation. This is unexpected. Mutual survival requires mutual assistance, Mara said simply. If we can find a way for your species to thrive without exploiting others, everyone benefits. A novel perspective among spacefaring civilizations. Talixis noted, most would simply eliminate a competitor facing biological crisis. The conversation continued for hours, delving into Zevran physiology, the nature of their psionic abilities, and the historical development of their neural harvesting technology. By its conclusion, Mara had negotiated unprecedented access for her medical and scientific teams to Zevran research facilities upon their arrival at Zevran Prime. As she left the command deck, Mara felt a curious mixture of hope and dread. The challenge was far greater than she had initially understood. This wasn't simply about liberating captive species, but about finding a way to sustain an entire civilization without its primary energy source. If they failed, the consequences could include not only the collapse of the Zevran ascendancy, but potentially a desperate war against a species fighting for its very survival. The remainder of the journey passed in a blur of research, diplomatic preparations, and increasingly substantive exchanges with the Zevran crew. As the initial hostility faded, curiosity emerged. The aliens began to study humans with the same intensity that Mara's team studied them, leading to occasionally awkward but productive cultural misunderstandings. Dr. Eliza Kenner, the expedition's anthropologist, developed a preliminary translation matrix for Zevran emotional states as expressed through neural filament patterns. Dr. Marcus Webb, specializing in xenobiology, identified potential alternatives to neural energy harvesting based on synthetic compounds that mimicked the electrochemical signatures of sentient thought. Mara coordinated these efforts while continuing her own research into the phenomenon that had started it all, her inexplicable resistance to Zevran subjugation technology. Working with Dr. Chen, she underwent extensive neural scanning that revealed unusual activity patterns in her limbic system and prefrontal cortex. It's as though your brain reconfigured itself in response to the psionic attack, Chen explained, reviewing the results. The pathways should be fixed by adulthood, but yours demonstrate extreme plasticity. I've only seen similar patterns in children recovering from severe trauma. Mara thought of her childhood on the pirate-infested moon of Ceres, the years spent in constant fear and vigilance. Neural adaptation as survival mechanism, she murmured. Could this be replicated? Taught? Possibly, Chen admitted. But the process that created it in you was traumatic. Ethically, we couldn't subject people to similar conditions just to develop this ability. The conversation was interrupted by the ship-wide announcement they had been anticipating. Zevran Prime was now visible on the long-range scanners. They had arrived at the heart of the ascendancy. The planet itself defied human expectations. Rather than a traditional terrestrial world, Zevran Prime consisted of massive interconnected structures orbiting a neutron star. The constructs, part space station, part living organism, pulsed with the same internal light as the Zevran neural filaments, suggesting they were extensions of the species' collective consciousness rather than mere habitations. As the Mindbreaker approached this living network, the human delegation gathered in the observation chamber. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation and no small amount of fear. They were about to become the first humans to set foot on an alien homeworld, if world was even the right term for the extraordinary construct before them. Remember, Mara addressed her team. We're here as witnesses to liberation, but also as problem solvers. The Zevran face genuine biological challenges without neural harvesting. Our goal isn't just to free captive species, but to ensure this transition doesn't lead to another crisis. The ship docked with one of the larger structures, interlocking with it through a process that seemed more organic than mechanical. Talixis appeared at the airlock that separated the human quarters from the rest of the vessel. "The High Council awaits," it announced. "They have agreed to your terms regarding the liberation process, but request initial meetings without the full delegation present." Mara had anticipated this. "Myself and 3 others," she countered, "our chief diplomat, our xenobiologist, and our security lead." Talixis's filaments rippled in what she now recognized as reluctant acceptance. "Agreed. The rest will remain aboard until formal protocols are established." Selecting her companions, Ambassador Lisa Kagawa, Dr. Webb, and Security Chief Victor Ramirez, Mara prepared to take a historic step into the unknown. As the airlock cycled open, revealing a corridor that pulsed with the same living light as the external structures, she took a deep breath and crossed the threshold. The architecture of Zevran Prime defied easy description. Corridors seemed to breathe. Walls rippled with subtle movements, and light emanated not from fixtures but from the very substance of the structure itself. The air carried strange harmonics that vibrated at the edge of human hearing, telepathic communications, Mara realized, rendered partially audible by the unique properties of the environment. Their Zevran escorts led them through a series of chambers, each larger and more elaborate than the last. Other members of the species observed their passage with what seemed like a mixture of curiosity, alarm, and, in some cases, outright hostility. Mara could sense the pressure of their attention, a subtle weight against her consciousness that her neural shield deflected automatically. Finally, they reached a vast spherical chamber dominated by a crystalline structure far larger than the one aboard the Mindbreaker. Within this crystal, 12 Zevran floated in suspension, their neural filaments forming an intricate network that pulsed with coordinated light. The High Council, the governing body of the entire ascendancy. "Approach," came the collective mental voice, powerful enough to make Mara's companions wince despite their psionic dampeners. "Let us look upon the species that has brought low the Zevran ascendancy." Mara stepped forward, maintaining a calm exterior despite the immense pressure of the Council's attention. "We come in peace," she stated, using both vocal speech and the rudimentary telepathic projection she had developed during the journey, "to witness the liberation you have promised and to offer assistance in your transition." A ripple of something like laughter, cold and without humor, washed through the chamber. "Assistance," the collective repeated. "The prey offers to help the predator find new hunting grounds." Ambassador Kagawa stepped forward. "If that metaphor were accurate, we would not be standing here as equals. Dr. Langston demonstrated that humans are not prey. We offer cooperation not from weakness, but from a position of mutual respect." The crystal pulsed, its light intensifying. "Respect," the collective mused. An interesting concept from a species that, until recently, we considered suitable only for neural harvesting. Yet here you stand, unshackled and demanding concessions that threaten our very existence. "Not threatening," Mara corrected. "Transforming. We've already identified potential alternatives to neural harvesting that could sustain your civilization without exploiting other sentient species." Dr. Webb took his cue, explaining the synthetic neural resonance compounds his team had theorized. The Council listened in silence, their collective consciousness evaluating the proposal with inhuman thoroughness. "Theoretical," they finally responded. "Untested. You ask us to abandon a proven survival mechanism for mere possibility." "We ask you to honor your agreement," Security Chief Ramirez interjected, his hand resting pointedly on his sidearm. "The liberation process was to begin immediately upon our arrival." Tension filled the chamber as the Council's attention focused on Ramirez. For a moment, Mara feared they had overplayed their hand, that the Zevran might choose conflict over compliance despite the risks. Then, unexpectedly, the crystal dimmed. "The process has already begun," the collective announced. "Observe." A portion of the chamber wall became transparent, revealing an adjoining space where dozens of different species, some humanoid, others utterly alien, were being released from neural shackles by Zevran technicians. Many appeared disoriented. Some collapsed as the connections that had bound them for years suddenly dissolved. The first group, the Council explained. There are millions more across Zevran space. The liberation will continue in phases to prevent system collapse. This is not compassion but practicality. Too rapid a transition would destroy the infrastructure upon which all depend, including the liberated species themselves. Mara nodded, understanding the logic even as she remained vigilant for deception. We will need verification protocols, access to liberation centers across your territory, communication with freed populations. All arranged, the Council confirmed, but in return, we require your assistance with the development of these synthetic alternatives. Your Dr. Webb's theories show promise, but implementation will require resources beyond our current capacity while managing this transition. It was a reasonable request, and one Mara had anticipated. Agreed, with conditions. Human scientists will work alongside yours, with full data sharing and ethical oversight. The negotiations continued for hours, establishing the framework for what would become known as the Chiron Accords, the first formal treaty between humanity and an established galactic power. By its conclusion, the human delegation had secured not only the promised liberation but unprecedented access to Zevran technology and star charts in exchange for scientific collaboration on sustainable alternatives to neural harvesting. As they prepared to return to the Mindbreaker to brief the rest of their team, Ambassador Kagawa pulled Mara aside. "This is more than we hoped for," she whispered. "But can we trust them? This cooperation seems too convenient." Mara considered the question carefully. "I think they're desperate," she replied quietly. "Whatever happened when I reflected their subjugation technology back at them, it frightened them profoundly. They're cooperating not just because of what I did, but because of what it implies about humanity's potential." "And what does it imply?" Kagawa pressed. "That we might be evolving in directions they never anticipated. That neuroplasticity might be more powerful than fixed psionic ability. That adaptation might ultimately prove stronger than dominance." Mara gazed back at the crystal that housed the High Council. "They've built an empire on the assumption that telepathic species are inherently superior. I showed them that assumption is flawed, and now they're scrambling to adjust before they encounter more humans like me." It was a sobering thought, that peace might rest not on mutual understanding but on mutual fear. Yet, it was a beginning, a foundation upon which something more genuine might eventually be built. Over the following weeks, the liberation process accelerated across Zevran space. The human delegation split into monitoring teams, traveling to key worlds and stations to verify compliance. Mara herself visited 7 different planets, witnessing the release of species ranging from insectoid hive minds to crystalline entities that communicated through polarized light. The reactions of these freed populations varied dramatically. Some expressed gratitude toward their human liberators. Others, particularly those that had been in bondage for generations, struggled to adapt to sudden freedom. A few harbored deep resentment toward all spacefaring species, including humans by association. Managing this chaotic transition became nearly as challenging as enforcing the Zevran compliance. Interspecies conflicts erupted on worlds where former captives competed for resources. Power vacuums led to the emergence of opportunistic factions. The humans found themselves cast in the role of mediators and peacekeepers, a role for which they had little preparation but growing necessity. Through it all, Mara continued her scientific collaboration with Zevran researchers, developing the synthetic neural resonance compounds that might eventually replace harvested energy. Early trials showed promise, though full implementation would require years rather than months. During a rare moment of respite, Mara stood on the observation deck of a Zevran research station, watching the unfamiliar constellations of this distant region of space. So much had changed in so little time. Humanity had gone from an isolated frontier species to a recognized power in galactic politics. Former enemies were now reluctant partners, and throughout known space, species that had never heard of Earth now spoke of humans with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Telexis joined her at the viewport, its neural filaments subdued in what she had come to recognize as a reflective mood. "The Accords are holding," it noted. 87% of registered captives have been liberated. Preliminary testing of the synthetic compounds shows 73% efficiency compared to harvested neural energy. "Progress," Mara acknowledged, "though we still have far to go." "Indeed." The Zevran commander was silent for a moment, then added, "The Council has authorized me to share something with you, something few non-Zevran have ever seen." Intrigued, Mara followed Telexis to a secure chamber deep within the station. There, projected in 3 dimensions, was a map of the galaxy unlike any she had seen before. Regions were color-coded in patterns that corresponded to no political or stellar classification she recognized. "What am I looking at?" she asked. "Psionic cartography," Telexis explained. "A mapping of telepathic species and psionic phenomena throughout known space. The red zones are regions dominated by species with abilities similar to or greater than Zevran. The blue indicates psionic dead zones, areas where telepathic communication fails for unknown reasons. And this, it indicated a small green region, is human space. Mara studied the map with growing concern. Human territory appeared tiny and isolated, surrounded by vast swaths of red. "These other telepathic civilizations, are they like the Zevran?" "Some are far worse," Telexis stated bluntly. "The Zevran at least recognize the value of preserving subject species. Others consume them completely. The Hive Collective, the Void Communion, the Thought Harvesters. Names your translators cannot properly render." "Why show me this?" Mara asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Because what happened at Chiron 5 changed more than just Zevran policy. It revealed a new player in the galactic equation, a species with natural resistance to psionic domination. The ripples of this discovery have spread far beyond our borders." The implication was clear. The liberation of subject species and the Chiron Accords were not the end of humanity's challenges, but rather the beginning of a much larger and more dangerous engagement with the galaxy at large. "These other civilizations, they'll come for us, won't they?" Mara asked. Telexis's neural filaments pulsed in affirmation. "Some already prepare expeditions to human space. They will not make the mistake we did, underestimating your capabilities. They will come prepared for resistance." "Then we need to be ready," Mara said, her mind already racing through implications and possibilities. "We need to understand what happened to me, how to replicate it, how to expand it." "Such understanding may require cooperation beyond what the Accords currently permit," Telexis suggested carefully. Mara caught the implication immediately. "You're proposing an alliance against these other telepathic species." "An alignment of interests," the Zevran commander clarified. "Your resistance abilities combined with our technological experience could create a bulwark against psionic exploitation throughout this sector. The liberation you began need not end with Zevran captives." It was a staggering proposition. Humans and Zevran working together to challenge the dominance of other telepathic civilizations, to extend the principles of the Chiron Accords across the galaxy. The potential benefits were enormous, as were the risks. "I'll need to consult with my government," Mara said finally. "This goes beyond my authority." "Of course," Telexis acknowledged. "But consider this, the knowledge of human resistance has already spread. You cannot return to obscurity. The choice now is not whether to engage with the wider galaxy, but how." As Mara left the chamber, the psionic map still bright in her mind's eye, she realized the truth of Telexis's words. Humanity had inadvertently announced its presence on the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible by defying a power that other species had feared for millennia. There was no going back to the relative safety of isolation. The question now was whether the adaptive resilience that had saved her on Chiron 5 could be extended to protect all of humanity from the greater threats that loomed beyond the stars, and whether former enslavers could truly become allies in a struggle for freedom that might reshape the galaxy itself. One thing was certain: the story that had begun with a small mining outpost on a toxic frontier world was far from over. It had merely expanded to encompass a stage as vast as the cosmos itself, with consequences that would echo across star systems for generations to come. As her transport prepared to return to human space with news of both the Accord's success and the greater challenges ahead, Mara gazed once more at the alien stars visible through the viewport. Somewhere out there, civilizations that had never encountered humans were already preparing to test their strength against this new species that had done the impossible, enslaved the enslavers, and lived to tell the tale. Humanity would need to be ready. And thanks to what they had learned from the Zevran, perhaps they would be. The liberation had begun with one mind reflecting power back upon itself. It would continue. Mara was certain, until every sentient being could stand free beneath the light of distant suns, unshackled by those who would make them less than what they were born to be. That was a future worth fighting for, no matter the cost.